With the trade deadline having come and gone, the rich just get richer. And we say thank you to a group of people that never get much credit at all. All that and plenty more now on the Junior Beast Pod on CROW LAX TV.
Welcome back to the Junior Beast Podcast. My name is Keenan, as always, joined by my co-host Muhammad. You know, we're coming into the final couple weeks of the season. Regular season anyway. Playoffs are right around the corner, but you know, this season feels like it's just flown by so fast. Like, we've barely had any time to, you know, settle in and see these teams play and all that. I don't know if that's just me or if you're kind of feeling that too.
Yeah, no, it has been a quick season, and I don't know. The schedule was a bit compressed this year. Instead of starting in late April, it didn't start for a lot of teams until May 9th, May 10th. So that was a little bit of a difference. But yeah, the schedule does feel condensed this year, even more than normal. And yeah, we only have 2 weeks left in the regular season, so it's going to be fun to look forward to what we have on store or in store coming up come playoff time.
No kidding, and I know this past weekend, and I know we'll probably get into it a bit later too, but Fort Saskatchewan Rebels clinching first in the North, you know, and that leads into kind of the trade deadline and what teams are doing to, you know, chase into it. You said it's come and gone. There were some interesting moves, to say the least. I don't know if I can really say much more than interesting. I'm curious how some of them pan out, but I think we should probably cover some of those moves.
Yeah, no, for sure. And why don't we start with the headliner, which was Riley Dowswell being acquired by the Shamrocks out of Red Deer for financial considerations. Obviously, those two teams have different drafts, so draft picks did not exchange hands. But the fifth-year player and leading goal scorer, as last I checked, in the RMLL Junior B division, is on his way to Calgary to join the Founders Cup hosts, and Red Deer gets some futures in return. You know, not much else to say here, but other than that, Calgary gets another shooter, a guy that can distribute the ball a little bit, and he makes them more of a dynamic offense.
Yeah, you know, I think this is a good pickup for the Shamrocks, considering, you know, with them hosting the Founders Cup and everything like that coming up in about, I don't know, 6-7 weeks time. So that is a huge pickup for them moving in down the stretch into the playoffs. And I mean, everybody from the South makes it into the playoffs anyway, but this just bolsters them into having maybe a good shot at run at another Larry Bishop Memorial Cup.
Yeah, and Keenen, the Shamrocks weren't done. They also add Jet DePava from the Marauders. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But he comes over, a defender. It looks, if you go by his penalty minutes, it looks like he might be a bit of an enforcer. Has 57 penalty minutes in 12 games for the Marauders. He comes over to the Shamrocks, and I'm sure they're hoping that he brings some type of physical presence to their lineup. So that would be their second addition. And then also around the deadline, this was a couple days prior, the Rebels and Outlaws would connect in a trade. Reed McLeod and a 2026 first rounder go to the Rebels in exchange for the Outlaws' second and third round picks in 2026. So in exchange for the Rebels' second and third round picks, I should say, to the Outlaws in 2026. And McLeod's rights revert back at the end of the season. So before we there was one other move here, but before we get to that, I want to just get your thoughts on that. The Rebels obviously shore up their goaltending, bring in McLeod, a guy that I think is probably the second best goalie this year in the North. And you know, he's had his hot spells and he's had his cold streaks, but he's a guy that when he's on the top of his game, he provides the Rebels some goaltending depth, and getting the second and third, or moving the second and third to get a first back is also a nice add for them. I can't really complain from the Rebel side of things with this deal.
Yeah, no, see, this is an interesting trade to me, and I know we'll get into the kind of more interesting one after this, but this one intrigued me for the simple fact that this means that, in my mind, the Rebels now have one of the most dangerous goaltending duos, not just in the North, but probably in the league. I mean, between Carpenter and McLeod now, I mean, how do you stop those two goaltenders? Like, we saw last week, and there was a couple clips out on the CROW LAX TV Instagram about it too. Just crazy saves from Carpenter over this past weekend of action. And, like, when he's going. When McLeod's going, he's going, like you said. So I don't know how you stop this Rebels goaltending. And on the other hand, like you said about getting a first round back, I'm a bit surprised that they get a first round and McLeod for a second and third. Maybe I expected a bit lower of a pick than that. But kudos to the Rebels for getting what they did. This is just an all-in-all good trade for the Rebels, and depending on how this next draft works out for the Outlaws, this could work out in their favor too, you know, dropping from first round to have some additional picks in round 2 and 3.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the idea is because he's a rental, the Rebels wanted to get a high pick back in exchange, and then, you know, they basically move up around, and the Outlaws come in behind that with their second and third round picks from the Rebels. So I get it sort of from both sides of things, but I think it was a good job by the Rebels to get that negotiation done, because I think they probably come out ahead in that deal.
Absolutely.
And then also, the Outlaws would acquire Lachlan Muir and Brody Stashniak as they try to restock the cupboard a little bit, as they look like they're about to play the CROW in the first round of the playoffs. They acquire Muir and Stashniak from the Warriors in exchange for a third round pick. And the condition on that is it drops to a fourth if Stashniak, who is hurt right now, plays 1 game or less. So he just needs to suit up for 2 games. It's a third round pick. And if it's 1 or less, it drops to a fourth round pick going back to the Warriors. And I really like this move for the Outlaws. I think they were badly in need of some depth and some guys that can get the ball up the floor defensively. And that's definitely something that Stashniak can do. He can play good, sound positional defense, and he can also give you some offense in transition. And Muir is a guy you can play at either end of the floor. I think for them, having another right-hander that could shoot the ball a little bit is going to be key. They've really lacked depth on the front gate. And so I think that if you're the Outlaws, you want to play him up there. We'll see. But yeah, if they can get healthy now, they also got Poulsen coming down from A after he was cut from the minors. So some reinforcements coming in for the Outlaws as they look to try to bolster their roster for an upcoming series here with the CROW in the 2-3 in the North.
You know, now this is the part that interests me. Is I know you had mentioned about how the third drops to a fourth. I think the wording of this trade is confusing, because the way that I'm reading this trade is that the Outlaws get Muir and Stashniak for the third round pick, but if Stashniak plays 1 game, then the Outlaws also get the Warriors' fourth round pick.
So what I understand is that the Warriors get third round as long as Stashniak suits up at least twice, and if it's any less than that, it drops to a fourth. I don't think there's any additional pick there.
Well, no, in the trade though, it says that the Warriors will give the Outlaws their 2026 fourth, not the other way around, which is why I'm a bit confused on the wording of this trade.
Okay,
At least
yeah.
In official records, I'm confused by this.
Yeah, that doesn't really make much sense. Yeah, because I mean, I'm gonna pull it up right now, but from what I understood, it was just a 3, and then if he doesn't suit up a certain amount of times, it's a 4th
instead of a third.
Instead of a third, which would make sense. I mean,
that makes sense to me too.
From a logical standpoint, that's what I would believe that to be the case, but I'm just looking for the semantics or the wording of this right now.
If B. Stashniak plays fewer than 2 games with Outlaws, the Warriors will give the Outlaws their 2026 fourth round draft pick that the Warriors acquired from the Rebels in a previous trade.
Okay, so it's separate from... So the Warriors are getting a third round pick regardless, and
but
then
the
they're
Outlaws
sending
could
a fourth back. They're sending a fourth back if Stashnik doesn't play at least twice. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so the
All
Outlaws
right.
get Muir, Stachniak, and a potential 4th-round pick for a 3rd-round pick.
Right. All right. Okay. So the
They
fourth is conditional on Stashnik dressing at least twice, and the Warriors are getting their third regardless for sending the two over. That's essentially what it comes down to.
Yeah. This trade, however, I do just want to say this on the website bothers me is the way that they have this worded and the placement of the condition. Like, can we work on, I don't know who runs this, but can we work on the way that we word things and the placement of things? Because this is the most confusing possible way that you could have outlaid this conditional pick. Like,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, it is a little off, but yeah, that's the way I would. Now that I actually read it again, that's how I would understand it. Is it's a third. The Warriors are getting a third no matter what, and then the Outlaws would get a fourth back if Stashnik can't go more than once, and that's essentially what that's what the trade boils down to. All right, so with the trade deadline a thing of the past now, let's move on to the week that was in the RMLL Junior B circuit. And we'll start on Thursday where the Shamrocks and the Mountaineers played in a football game. A Shamrocks 16-13 win as the teams traded goals all game. Bjarnason started and Majek finished the game for the Shamrocks. Huge production from multiple players in this one. Lots of just crooked stat lines. There was also next to no penalties in this game, which was interesting for two teams that know each other pretty well. I would imagine there's some bad blood, but there was very few penalties. And when there were goals, struggling penalty kills in this game. And I think this is probably a matchup you could see come the South Final. Keenan, go ahead. Shamrocks, Mountaineers.
yeah, looking at this game with only a total of 5 penalties across the board, that's a wild stat line to finish with on a 16-13 final. The first penalty didn't even come until the second half of the game too. So like just absolutely crazy. Mounties though doing a nice job leading through the first, and I'm not sure if the penalties maybe kind of got them in trouble a little bit. I know that the Shamrocks they got a pair of power play goals on the 5-minute roughing minor, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe that kind of led to a little bit of something. But I mean, kudos to the Mounties for staying in this with the Shamrocks, who, quite honestly, I mean, deserve that top spot in the South. Now, a bolstered Shamrocks offense come this weekend, so going to be interesting to see what happens here. Shout out, though, Dane Hansen, 4 goals, 3 assists for 7 points on the Mountie side. Other side, Jaden Kulinich, I believe is how you pronounce it. 1 goal, 6 assists for 7 points. So a couple of 6-pointers, a couple of 7-pointers, a couple of 5-pointers throughout this game. It doesn't really surprise me having guys with a lot of points when these two clubs face each other. These are two clubs that, in my opinion, are known for their offenses. Must have been a great game to watch. Like, I wish I could have watched this game because it looks like it was one hell of a fight.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, those two teams know each other well, and they're probably on a collision course. With the uptick in play from the Mountaineers of late to meet again in the South Final, but the Marauders will have something to say about that as they will collide with the Mountaineers in round 1. Now, also on Thursday, there was another game, and it was the Kings going to Saskatoon to take on the SWAT. Really not a whole lot to say about this one, Keenan. They go on the road, get a win in a tighter type game, and the second period was the difference here. 4-0, the Kings would take over, and you see that a lot. Better teams kind of taking their basically just putting their foot on the gas in the second period, using the short change to the opposition's net quick, and turning that into goals, and that's what the Kings look like they did here. They get the win 7-4 over the SWAT.
Yeah, and I think when I saw the Kings facing the SWAT, I think I expected kind of, a bit more of an offensive showing from the Kings. I mean, nonetheless, they did to do to get it done. But, yeah, I think I just expected a bit more. But kudos to the SWAT for, kind of hemming them in to only pot 7.
Yeah, now let's move to Friday, where the Kings and SWAT would renew acquaintances, this time in Regina. And Jackson Lenz would go for 4 goals, 2 assists. Cashton Seaborg, 1 goal, 4 assists, and a 15-6 Regina win. Queen City is able to sweep the SWAT in the home and home. Henry Elliott for the SWAT would have 2 goals. So not much else to say here, really. Like, this is just a team taking care of what they need to take care of. Not making sure they don't drop games they shouldn't, and the Kings were able to do so with back-to-back wins.
Yeah, and this is kind of what I expected in probably back-to-back games, was a bit more of a stretch, stretch final of 9-goal separation. So, again, I don't have a whole lot extra to say about this one. I mean, the Kings taking the weekend sweep of the SWAT.
Yes, sir. And now also on Friday, the Mountaineers would host the Rampage, and they played they played on the second consecutive night at home. And Red Deer just kind of looks as though they hit the wall in this game. Mountaineers would get out to a 5-1 lead after the first, and then it just looked like they put it in neutral. The rest of the game just sort of played out. Dane Hansen, 3 goals, 1 assist. Madden Bowers, excuse me, 2 goals for the Mountaineers, in what would turn into, I believe, Dallaswell's last game as a member of the Rampage. I don't think they played again. They did not. So that would be his last game in a Rampage jersey. And the Mountaineers, with a big win for them as they look to try to solidify home floor advantage in the South, they take the 8-3 win.
Yeah, and I think this is another kind of expected finish, with the way that the Rampage have kind of just, fallen from a little bit of a fall from grace from last year. So, yeah, Mounties just taking care of business again, trying to just solidify that home floor advantage moving into the final 2 weekends of the season.
And also on Friday, another clash down south as the Mavericks would go into Okotoks. And this is a game that saw 7 special teams goals scored in this game between the two teams. This was a front half of an odd scheduling spot for the Mavericks, as they would be in Okotoks on Friday, and then they would then travel to Edmonton on a Saturday afternoon, all within 18 hours of each other. Carter Michalek, 3 goals, 2 assists. Aiden Sutherland, 2 goals, 3 assists. And then on the Okotoks side, Ben Erickson, 2 goals, 3 assists. Another close win by the Mavericks. They had a sort of a burst of goals, I think, in this game in the second period, like between the two teams. There was one period with more goals than the others. I think the Mavericks are content at this point to just collect these wins. Doesn't really matter how it looks. And they get another close win in Okotoks.
Yeah, and this has kind of been the story for the Mavericks all season long, is winning these tight games. And I think I want to say that some of that contributes to, their experience in the playoffs last year and going out to Founders last year. But they've been very good at closing out these tight games when they have to, which is, the main reason why they sit first place in the Central and are, at this point, looking like they're going to be the ones getting that first round bye.
Yeah, no, they're just doing what they should in a lot of these games, and often, much like the Rebels, doing in a lot of cases enough to win. Now the Silvertips and Chill, for the 4th time this year, I believe that's the most any two teams have played already, or to this point in the season, would go head to head, and the Silvertips overtake the Chill with a 4-1 third frame as they win the game 7-5. The Chill offense largely slowed down here. The Silvertips continue to dominate this series, Keenan. Listen to this. 12-1-1 since April 29th, 2022. So that's a pretty big, when we're talking about RMLL Junior B lacrosse, a 14-game sample size is a pretty big sample size, all things considered, and they've gone 12-1-1 against the Chill since April 29th of 2022. Ty Montgomery, 2 goals, 1 assist for the Silvertips. Jacob Shukat, 2 goals, 1 assist for the Chill. And there's got to be something there, obviously, just stylistically and how the two teams match up. I don't see the two teams enough to really tell you what it is. Other than the fact that I know that traditionally the Silvertips are pretty athletic, and the Chill, every time I see them, they kind of struggle with transition and stopping it and getting back and having quick line, quick on and off the floor. So maybe that's it. But the Silvertips continue to have the Chill's number.
Yeah, and if I'm a Chill fan or a Chill player or even on the bench, is I look at that and like from an outsider's perspective, it worries me a bit. But if I'm actually on that team or around that club, I don't think that I pay much attention to that 14 game sample size. Sure, it's 12-1-1 over those last 14, but once you get into playoffs, it's a whole new game, and we're basically on a collision course at this point for the Silvertips and Chill to meet in round number 1 in the Central. So I'm curious to see if the Chill are able to, defy the odds and knock out the Silvertips early. And I think what would have been the Silvertips' earliest defeat in quite a while. Maybe not. Maybe they actually lost recently. I can't remember their last first round exit. So yeah, I'm curious how they match up in the playoffs, because we obviously know that the Silvertips have the Chills number in the regular season, and I mean, I guess seasons past in the playoffs, but you never know what can happen.
Yeah, and I mean, any of those teams, as they've shown throughout the year, even, I mean, the Chill do have the one win against the Silvertips this year, kind of breaking that stretch or that continuous run of wins by the Silvertips. So they do have the ability to beat them, but yeah, it looks like they're probably going to have to play them in the first round, and so that's going to be something that they're going to have to figure out if they want to advance in this year's postseason. Friday night also saw a game in the North. The Outlaws taking down the Warriors by a score of 13-7. The Warriors led halfway through this game. Some glaring defensive breakdowns led to the Outlaws taking over. Tons of turnovers in this game, Keenan, just all over the floor. The Outlaws, I thought, were better on loose balls and just made a few fewer turnovers, and that eventually was the difference in the game. Austin Wells, big game, 4 goals, 2 assists. Kieran Lewis, the AP, 3 goals, 2 assists. And then on the Warriors side, Steve Andrusiak, 5 goals and 2 assists, as he has the game of a lifetime for him. The Outlaws, this was a big game. They solidify their position and clinch that final playoff spot in the North. They're going to be the 3 seed. They're going to start the playoffs in game 1 at the CROW in the best of 3. The Warriors season, for all intents and purposes, would end here, and they've got 3 games left now on the calendar.
Yeah, and I know. I think it was last week we were talking about the no penalties thing with the Shamrocks. How about the Outlaws in this game not taking a single penalty, but ending up with, I think it's 3 power play goals. Just impressive. Great work by them. Which I don't know if that's actually accurate, because they are credited with a shorthanded goal. The Outlaws are. So I don't know if there may have been some sort of weird miscommunication on the RMLL website or something here, but yeah, good on the Outlaws to be able to fight back and take this game out of the Warriors' grasp, clinch that final playoff spot. And if you're the Warriors, it's unfortunate, but I mean, again, like we've said, you kind of went into this season knowing you're in a bit of a rebuild phase, so I don't think it's all that surprising to say that the Warriors are the ones on the outside looking in. I know I'm looking forward to the CROW and Outlaws in the first round, because that is going to be one hell of a series.
Yeah, and especially with the Outlaws now getting some reinforcements and getting some depth on that roster, I think maybe that's going to be a lot better of a first round than maybe we would have said a week or 2 ago. And Friday night also had another game go down in the North. Rebels 15, CROW 8. 13 goals in this one in the second period. Didn't watch this, Keenan, but that tells me both teams were getting take advantage of on the short change. Rebels pull away in the third as they win the final frame 6-1. Reed Lowe, 4 goals, 2 assists. Calix Simonson, 4 assists. And on the CROW side, who else? Liam Elliott, 2 goals, 3 assists. Josh Vodchuk, the same stat line, 2 goals, 3 assists. And we just talked about that impending CROW Outlaws series, and I need to see a couple of guys step up depth-wise offensively for the CROW. They've done it against teams like the Warriors, but it hasn't been consistent enough against some of these other teams. Elliott and Fodchuk can only do so much. I need to see more of a team offense from them. The ball just every time I watch them, the ball kind of stays in the same sticks, and so I think that's going to be a key for them if they really because that the offense has to be what carries them, and so they're going to need an uptick just in the general flow of their offense as we look towards the playoffs. They're going to have to outscore teams. I don't think they're shutting teams down. So that's going to be something to watch for as the crew get ready to take on the Outlaws.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, we've seen glimpses of the crew depth that come through every now and then, but it does seem like it is kind of constantly like the Elliots, the Fodchucks, the Dickens that are kind of, controlling the pace of the game on the crude side of things. I agree. I think there does need to be a little more consistency with the depth of the crude. I think that potentially is why the crude kind of, sit where they do, is that they're not getting the game after game after game performances from some guys that they maybe anticipate. Nonetheless, the Crude's still in the playoffs, and good for them with home floor advantage. Just if they want to take out the Fort Saskatchewan Rebels and, walk into Larry Bishop, sure, the Rebels are already going to Larry Bishop by way of hosting. But yeah, if the Crude want to take out the Rebels and maybe, say, like, look what we did to you, not even last weekend kind of thing, they need to get that consistency from those depth guys.
Yeah, because over time, especially it gets hotter outside. You've played more games. In the playoffs, you're playing oftentimes 2 games in 36 hours or 48 hours, sometimes even worse, sometimes 24 hours, and it can take a toll on you mentally and physically. And I just think that that's going to be the biggest thing for them is they need to get some other guys stepping up and make it more of a team concept offensively, and we'll see if that is able to take place as they get, as I said, set to take on the Outlaws in round 1. Now, Saturday, there were 2 more games, and really I don't have anything to say about them. Rebels 14, Outlaws 4, and Mavericks basically by the same score, 13-4. They take down the Warriors. 2 sound victories, 2 teams that should win those games. They did so. Pretty non-event. I did the one game. The Mavericks were up 7-0, I believe, with 4 minutes to go in the second, and then they took Swan out. The Warriors were able to get some goals from that point on, but the third period saw a bunch of goals take place after the game was already decided, and that ended up 13-4. And as I said, Rebels take down the Outlaws 14-4. Outlaws shorthanded again. No Grace, no Porter. And I think there were a couple others missing as well. They had to use a lot of affiliates. But yeah, just kind of 2 teams that were in good positions to win and did so there. I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, no, I don't really have anything additional constructive to add to that, so.
Sounds good. So with that said, I want to move on to a little bit of a sidebar here, and I just want to acknowledge a group of people here. If you frequent RMLL games and you find yourself in the arena a lot, you might be thinking that your brain's playing tricks on you and you're seeing the same people over and over again, but you're really not. And I'm talking about the referees in the RMLL. There's less referees than I can ever remember. A lot of the guys that did major games have retired or moved on or passed away or all kinds of things, and gotten taken into different walks of lives, had families. And so the reffing community at the major level anyway is short. And these guys, and I'm talking about Sean Reed and Kevin Cohott and Ryan White and Wes Kendall, and there's a few others as well, but those are sort of the 4 that I see anyways, a ton. These guys are doing 2-3 games in a night, and they're really stepping up, and I just wanted to give them a bit of an acknowledgement because without them, there's no game, there's no league, and it takes a lot of mental and physical fortitude to do this. I know as a ref, like you're moving and you're running a lot. That's why when I see refs, sometimes I'm thinking like, how is this guy? Like, I always imagine refs looking like marathon runners almost, just because you're moving so damn much. But you really are, and you have to be on your game. You have to be focused. And these guys, I think, bring a lot of bring a lot to the game, and I just wanted to give them a bit of a shout out on the pod here. I know Keenan, you're in the rinks quite a bit, or at least enough to know that these guys are doing a lot for the game, and I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, it's funny actually that you mention it. I was talking with a couple of our other play-by-play guys here on CROW LAX TV, and we were kind of mentioning like that you see a lot of the same referees, especially like in the Edmonton area. I mean, that's where we're based out of, so we see them quite a bit. But yeah, just how it's kind of the same guys that are always doing games across. It doesn't even matter what division it is; they're kind of doing all the divisions whenever they can. So I mean, kudos to the referees. I know that there's times where you want to yell and get mad at a referee because of a bad call he made, which I think is completely justified. I mean, sure, get mad at the referees. Don't like verbally harass them. This is not me. This is not me saying you should yell at referees. I promise. But the emotions take over from time to time, and you're like, oh, that's a bad call, or how did you not see that? But like, these guys are working, like you said, so many games. They can't catch everything on the floor. And they're the lifeblood that makes lacrosse tick, right? Is without the referees, you don't have any games being played, and you're not able to play the game. So, definitely guys that deserve more than what they get.
Yeah, and I mean, I think any official will tell you it's more of a mental thing. Like you take so much flack that when somebody actually like points out, goes out of their way to say, "Hey, man, like I respect what you do. You're a good ref. You understand the game." Those kinds of comments, they go a long way. So, if you're around any of these guys, I let them know that they're doing a good job, and just wanted to point that out because they're carrying a lot of weight, and it's not easy to do. And that's a perfect segue here, Keenan, because we're going to go into Beast of the Week now and talk about a guy who's carried a lot of weight. Dane Hansen of the Mountaineers, 4 goals, 3 assists versus the Shamrocks, and 3 goals and 1 assist against the Rampage. And to put this into perspective, he's got 55 points on the season. And next closest on his team has 28. So he's basically doubling the next closest output on his own team. He's doing a lot of heavy lifting. I think it's time that he gets some notoriety and some accolades for what he's done this year, stepping in after they lose Dame a season ago, who really bolstered or really led their offense. Dane Hansen has sort of stepped into that role, and he's done a very good job. Dane Hansen is your Beast of the Week. The Calgary Mountaineer takes the award home.
And can we just talk about his stat line quick? Is like, I know we're kind of in the late part of the season, and he's getting Beast of the Week now, but listen to this stat line. He has scored in all but one game for the Mountaineers this season. Only the first game he didn't get a goal, but every single game that he's played for the Mounties this year, he's gotten a point. Like, unbelievable, man. At least 1 point. So, like, it's unbelievable just the offensive output that he's putting out, whether it be goals or apples.
Yeah, no, he's been a consistent performer for them, and I just thought it was time that, off the big week here, that he gets that acknowledgement. So Dane Hansen is your Beast of the Week in our second to last regular season pod of the year. Now let's move over, Keenan, to do some power rankings. And it really stayed the same at the top for me. A little bit of shuffling in the back portion, but not a whole lot. I did move the Calgary Chill down for the second or third consecutive week here. I've got them at 5. They're just sort of coming up a little smaller than I would like to see in some of these big games, and I just can't put them ahead simply of some of these other teams right now. So I'm going to go with them at 5. I still think that they can score with anybody and probably have the advantage out the front gate. But, there's some other areas of the team that I need to see a little bit more from, so I'll go with them at 5. The Mountain View Mavericks will be at 4. They got a couple more wins on the weekend. Little bit of a tougher road trip going all the way from Okotoks to Edmonton. They get the pair of wins, they move on, and they look like they're going to finish first in the Central and get home floor, which is going to be key for them. At number 3, I've got the Rocky View Silvertips. And this team, man, like, they've played a tough schedule. They're in the toughest division in the league. They had the lowest expectations, I would say, of any potential contender this year. and they've surpassed all of them. I think that given how much they own the chill, for lack of a better phrase, and then the fact that they've beaten the Mavericks this year and early season, they probably should have beaten them and have the season series to this point. In a 4-3 loss where they outshot them like 56-30, 56-29, something like that. Um, I just think that their overall body of work has been a bit more impressive, and the Mavericks have survived a lot of games and had to come back, and so that's why I'm putting the Silvertips up above them. And so they'll reside in the number 3 spot. At number 2, nothing changes here. The Fort Saskatchewan Rebels just continue to win games, and their physical style of play has worn on teams, and they've been very good at home. Haven't lost a single game in the Fort this year. And then at number 1, just getting better at this deadline, or were the Calgary Shamrocks. No reason to move them down. They got into a high-scoring affair with the Mountaineers, still found a way to win. They'll stay at number 1 for me. Keenan, go ahead. Your power rankings as we approach the final 10 days or so of the regular season.
So I'm gonna give my honorable mention first here, and that's gonna be to the Mounties. You know, in that high scoring affair with the Shamrocks, and sure they come up short, but I mean, kudos to them to basically go pound for pound with them, and then the win over the Rampage, which I mean, in technicality, is a easy win for them. And then the loss last weekend to the CROW only by a single goal. They're going to get my honorable mention as they're offensively looking kind of the strongest that they have all season long. At number 5, I slot the Silvertips in here, just because the Silvertips did take a bit of a dip for a period of time there where they lost to the Chill, they lost to the Blizz. Sure, a tight game against the Blizz. And it's a hard division that they're working in. They're still pulling out wins. But they are going to sit in my number 5 spot. My number 4 through 1, they're actually all of the division leaders. So in a somewhat particular order, I have the Kings down at number 4. The Kings, the only reason that I slot them in this low is we've only seen the Kings play, a few games on the road this year. Is they've played their entire home schedule. Now they have a set of 5-6 games on the road to close out their season. Warriors, Rebels, CROW, and doubles against the Blizz. I'm curious to see how they finish out on the road this season. So far, I mean, their only loss all year has been, their second loss on the year to the Shamrocks, and their only road loss was to the Shamrocks. So I'm curious to see how they close out the year here against the North and the Blizz. In number 3, I have the Mavericks. It's a hell of a division. It's a tough division. These top 3 are very much movable, however you want to frame them. The Mavericks, I only put them this low because they are in the 3rd spot, just due to that game with the Marauders, as I kind of expected them to take over a little more. And then, they had that game against the Silvertips last weekend that they ended up losing, and the game against the Rebels a couple weekends ago that, they kind of just, I don't know what it was, but they lost by 5. So I do slot the Mavericks in at number 3. I think they're returning to form now. So I'm curious to see how they do in their final 4 games of the season. 3 of those in Innisfail, and we know Innisfail is a hard building to walk into and win. In number 2, I have the Shamrocks. They're kind of just on cruising mode, into the playoffs. We kind of expect this from the Shamrocks. They had the loss to the Mavericks a couple weeks ago, but it was a 1-goal loss. Otherwise, the Shamrocks just looking dominant as ever. So they are going to sit in my number 2 spot. In my number 1 spot is the Fort Saskatchewan Rebels. This is a team that has not lost at home all season long. The only losses, again, were in Winnipeg. So I'm curious to see how they close out the season with 3 more games on tap, as they have the default win against the Rockies that was supposed to take place this week. So they've got the Kings, the Outlaws, and the CROW to finish off their season. Honestly, I think I see the Rebels finishing the season 17-3. I think they'll be able to pull out all 3 wins. So the Rebels I have up top. And before you say it, Mo, I know I had the Chill up high last week. The Chill do end up falling out just with the way that things happened this week. I think they can easily work their way right back in, as the power rankings are so hard to make and it's so tight. But the pair of losses that they've suffered at the hands of the Rebels and the Silvertips, those are just going to fall them out of the top 5.
As Keenan's love-hate with the Rebels and the Chill continues here, I will mention that I had the Queen City Kings at honorable mention. I forgot to bring that up. I thought about putting them at 5. If the Chill and the Kings were to play, say in Red Deer in a 3-game series, I would still take the Chill. So that's sort of where I'm at with that. But the Kings are right there, and they could be anywhere, probably from 4 to honorable mention. So I wanted to make sure that I brought that up, that the Kings are in the conversation, and I would expect to see them at the Larry Bishop, but it's not going to be easy having to deal with the Blizzard in the playoffs. As we know, the Blizzard have their number, and the Blizzard are winners. So it's going to be fascinating to watch here down the stretch.
Before we close out,
go ahead. I was just going to say, Keenan, before you go here, keep in mind the Rebels are hosting the provincial, so the fact that they haven't lost yet this year at home bodes well for them, obviously.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because actually my point, it kind of ties into their home record. This weekend, the Rebels will move from the Dow Centennial Center into their permanent home again of the Jubilee Recreation Center. As they were supposed to move in for the start of the year, and then due to some construction and renovation delays, they've been delayed into I think they got possession back in that building yesterday, technically. So this will be the first weekend that we see them back in the Jubilee Recreation Center. I'm curious, how do you think that plays out for the Rebels heading back there? And, they haven't been in that building in a couple seasons. Do you think there's any rust that they need to shake off in that building? Because, I don't think the building will have really much to do with the Rebels and their domination. But I'm just curious your perspective as a former player.
There will be guys on that team that wouldn't have played much, if at all, there. There's not a whole lot of minor lacrosse that goes on there anymore. So there'll be some younger guys on that team that probably wouldn't have played there because they would have played all of last year in Josephsburg, and maybe even the latter portion of 2 years ago, and then all of this year in the Dow. So, every arena is different. Like, you got different sight lines. The ball looks a little different when it's in the air. There's different backdrops. The lighting's different. So, it can have an effect, but I don't think they're going to be practicing in there and stuff. So maybe the first game is a little different for guys, but I wouldn't. And this is coming from somebody that's very finicky with that kind of stuff. It bothers me. Different arenas. I always had arenas I really liked and arenas that I hated. And I'm still the same way, but it's even though I'm not playing anymore, but just even going into them as a fan or as a broadcaster or as a coach, whatever, right? So it is a little different. I think it'll take some adjusting to, but it's not like they're going to be playing on turf, whereas they were playing on cement all year or anything like that. So I think there'll be a small adjustment period, but I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to hurt them in the long run. And Keenan, one other thing I want to bring up is, just for interest's sake and for everybody out there that's going to attend the provincials, I hope to God that the final is not a Shamrock East final. That would be the worst case scenario. Or one of the two is in, because then whoever's playing them is in. I want to, the last 2 years I've had an East team in the final. I'm just hoping, and now this year the Shamrocks are hosting the Founders, so you could have a double whammy this year. I hope, ideally, this is like Fort Saskatchewan Silvertips or something like that in the final. That would be outstanding. One game takes all. It's been a while since the provinces and the league has seen that. So I'm just hoping already for that as we approach the provincials.
You know what, my dream of the finals this year, and this is going to come way out of left field, is going to be Mounties Chill. That would be my dream.
That two Calgary teams going at it, and teams that are not already in. but having the Founders played in their host city, that'd be pretty cool.
That would be super cool. I would love to
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah, guys that would have played with and against each other their whole lives. Yeah, that would be neat.
Is it
But
realistic? Probably not, but I mean, hey, a man can dream.
yeah, I mean, it's not. There's weirder things that have happened than that, but
True.
obviously the Mounties would have to beat the Shamrocks and all that, but yeah, no, that is even the jerseys would just be a great look too. Actually, now that you bring that up, I wouldn't mind that either. But
seeing those Mounties jerseys on a national stage, oh, that would be so nice.
Yeah, no, those are pretty sharp, but yeah, we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, I hope the final is two teams that are not already booked in, that just think that increases everything and brings up the entertainment value tenfold. So that will do it for this podcast. I want to remind everybody, you can check me out on Twitter at MJ_9 and find me on Instagram at m.joma. Any questions, concerns, anything you want to talk about, anything lacrosse related, I'm always down. So hit me up there. Keenan, let everybody know what's going on the channel this upcoming week.
Oh man, I was so enamored with the fact of a Mounties chill, I actually forgot to even pull that up. So just give me a second here. This weekend is a bit of a busier weekend on the network, but not quite as busy as some. It's going to be a 7-game slate for you this weekend, 5 of which are Tier 1 matchups. I'll start with Friday night, 7:30 p.m., the Queen City Kings, as they start their final road trip out to Alberta, will take on the Warriors. Again, that game Friday, 7:30 p.m. from Bill Hunter Arena. Saturday, it's going to be 12:30 p.m. as the Tier 2 Chaos are going to take on the Tier 2 Bandits in Stupapart Arena. That game is a special, I don't know if you want to call it like a special presentation or whatnot, but that game coming to you from Calgary, 12:30 Saturday. Half an hour later, 1 p.m., as the Drillers will take on the Saints in what I believe is the final taste of female action this season on the network. And Saturday, 3 p.m. afternoon matchup as we move into the final 4 Tier 1 games. The CROW heading down the QE2 to take on the Silvertips. That game again Saturday, 3 p.m. And an evening matchup for the Queen City Kings as they'll take on the Fort Saskatchewan Rebels at 7 p.m. Pair of games on your Sunday to finish off your weekend. The Queen City Kings, a 1 p.m. game against the CROW on Sunday, as the CROW will play their second game in 22 hours on the weekend. And to finish off the weekend, 2 p.m., the Warriors taking on the Beaumont Outlaws. Well, that's going to do it for this week's Junior Beast podcast. Be sure once again to like, subscribe, comment, hit that notification bell, be notified every time we go live all season long. Junior B Tier 1, Junior B Tier 2, Alberta Major Female, and Senior B, as well as you'll be notified every time a new Junior Beast goes live here. Only a couple more, as Mo said, a couple more regular season ones, but then we've got your coverage of the playoffs as well. Well, for my co-host Muhammad, my name is Keenan. Before I close it out, be sure to follow us on Instagram and X at CROW LAX TV. I almost forgot, man. I'm very forgetful this evening. I don't know why that is. Super weird.
Because it's an early start time. Like, we're usually doing this podcast at like 11, and it's 6:30. So maybe it's just too early for you.
Maybe I need to sacrifice the energy for, clarity of mind, apparently.
Yeah, you like the late night stuff. I'm the same way. I'm not criticizing. It's just I don't know.
I'm a bit of a night owl, I will say. But anyway, that does it once again. For my co-host Muhammad, my name is Keenan. Thank you for tuning in to the Junior Beast, and we will see you next week.